Hi and welcome. On behalf of the HDI team, I'm so excited to welcome you to day 2 of Support World Live. We are so excited to bring this community together in this virtual digital model, and we hope that you're enjoying all the unique content and opportunities that HDI is known for. Make sure that you are engaging with all the sessions and the roundtables and the exhibitor spaces to make the most of your Support World Live experience. Day 1 featured some really amazing content, so be on the lookout for an email that captured some of the highlights from day 1. And we encourage you to engage with any of these sessions. And all the sessions will be up and available for your viewing until the end of 2020. So today I am excited to welcome two individuals that one I've known for a while and one that I met. We figured out, Nick, about 3 years ago we met at the HDI Support Center Director course in Philadelphia. So we have a great session today featuring Nick D'Amico from Jefferson Health. He's the Senior Director for the IST Solution Center. And we have John Custy, who is a Senior Consultant with HDI. So welcome, gentlemen.
Hello. Hello. Good morning, everyone.
All right. So I'm so excited to have these two with you because we, as HDI, have been what I would consider a partnership. John calls it that, a partnership with Jefferson Health for quite a while. And Jefferson Health has a really great story to share about pre-COVID, during COVID, and even kind of now, as we say, sort of coming out. I don't know if Nick will agree with me on that. A really great story. And so today we want to talk about their pivot to reinvention is sort of the name of this. And so, Nick, I want to kick it off with you and really just start by talking about your scope of services. So share with us kind of where you were when all of this hit with your scope of services, and tell us a little bit about Jefferson Health, because you guys are a really unique organization, which is why I'm so excited for this audience to hear the story.
Sure. So Jefferson consists of Jefferson Health, which has 14 hospitals in the greater Philadelphia area. We also have 10 colleges and 3 schools. My scope of services includes desktop support and help desk for the organization. So we're supporting 30,000 employees, 6,100 doctors through our solution center, which is our branded help desk. We have about 198 people on our team between desktop and solution center. So before COVID, our focus was EMR implementation. We're trying to standardize across the 14 hospitals. So we're rolling out Epic across those hospitals. We were also focusing on merger and acquisition. So we had a few mergers in our pipeline to go. When COVID hit at the beginning of March, we had to stop and pivot to support the organization through that pandemic.
Okay. So when did that time frame really start of having to pivot and really start to move?
Yeah, beginning of March. The enterprise opened up an incident command center for COVID. So we opened that up in the beginning of March. We were having daily huddles, sometimes multiple times a day. They coordinated all the operational efforts, as well as all the IT efforts. We rolled up into that.
Okay. And so one of the reasons I wanted John to join us for this conversation is John has been working with Nick and Jefferson Health as an organization. So I wanted him to help kind of provide some insight along with Nick, because I always love having a consultant point of view. John, what have you seen from customers? Did you see, around March was that time frame? Was it April for a lot of customers starting to pivot? What did you kind of see there as well?
I think it's kind of interesting. It was early March. We see it with I see it with most customers. Again, I think the geography plays into this. Being in the Northeast, where Nick is a short distance from New York City, I'm in Boston. Obviously, it hit New York and Boston very early before it hit most of the country. I think the challenge was for Nick and other organizations in Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, basically almost, I'm going to get this close, Nick, but I want to say like on a Thursday, everybody said we're shutting down on Friday. And basically people moved, basically their entire corporate structure, anyway, that wasn't working from home, basically got moved to home over the weekend.
Yes,
and so
exactly.
People basically on Thursday were told, take home your laptop, take home a monitor. Some people tried to work Friday, but basically Monday, everybody's expected to be back working. And organizations that had, I'll say, good major incident process, the whole command center process, which Nick had there. We had been talking about that, actually, and they had been, I think, improving their major incident procedure. for probably at least 18 months before that. But I think a lot of organizations leverage that sort of command and control from a disaster business continuity viewpoint. They leverage that, but obviously it was much, much bigger than most organizations had dealt with up to that time, right? It wasn't just one service down.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point to bring up, John. You know, the fact that, Nick, you guys had been working on that incident control, and it's a good lesson learned for a lot of us out here, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, fancy, we've already learned that lesson. But I think that's something, if you haven't invested in that now, like that should be on your roadmap for sure. One of the statistics, Nick, that you told me that I thought was really interesting, I want to make sure I get this right. You moved 5,000 corporate workers to work from home within a week. So was that in the hospital, in the university setting, or was it across both?
It was across both. So our corporate pillar is common between the health system and the university. So we did a consolidation into one office building in September. So that certainly helped things. But then, we did pivot 5,000 people to work from home in a weekend. We were a traditional organization. We didn't have a lot of work from home to begin with. So while we had the technology to do it, we had to expand a little bit here and there. These folks were just not typically accustomed to working from home. So as we did that, we saw a tremendous spike in our contact volume at the help desk to get through all of this.
That's something to look at. So we have a visual that shows your contact volume. And that's a really interesting point that you bring up about culture for just a moment, because that's something that just kind of hit me that I didn't even think about with your organization. Is you've got a university setting and a hospital setting. Not many people are working from home, and having to pivot really quickly culturally had to be difficult.
Yeah.
More so than other environments. I think about like in our corporate environment, most people were already working from home. It wasn't really that big of a deal.
Yeah. So we stood up a task force within the organization, and we worked with the directors and vice presidents of each corporate organization, so revenue cycle and HR. And, we did huddles with them throughout the first 2 weeks to make sure that we'd got everybody from home and everybody was worked through the major issues. We had some access issues to work through, some hardware issues. And at the same time we're doing this, we're also standing up an extra 200 surge ICU beds, as well as 10 drive-through testing sites. So,
oh my gosh,
it's an interesting time.
Right, and trying to support faculty, staff, and students at a certain level as well, who've been interrupted and having to move to virtual classes. And I would just assume professors having to learn how to use platforms probably pretty quickly.
Yeah, so we have over 8,000 students. We saw a 10-time increase in Zoom usage through the faculty. So yeah, that was definitely, the only thing we had on our side was that it was spring break. So we were able to get an extra week there to help ease the transition for the students.
That was probably huge. That was huge. Yeah, so let's look at that. Let's look at the spike in contacts that you had. And I'm sure for a lot of our audience, this may look similar to what you had as well. So when did you really see your volume start to spike? And here's the graphic here for everyone to look at.
Yeah, so we saw it the first week of March. If you see the green line I have there, that's our rolling 6-month average. And then, we were up, 4 or 5 times that through the first half of March. And then we started to trail down a little bit. Some contributing factors here. We also support patients at our help desk. So, our telehealth program, while we were an early adopter, we were in a good position. It grew 48 times through the month of March. So we had a lot of contacts with that for patients getting their portal accounts set up for the first time, helping the providers get set up, as well as all the work from home. So one of the things that contributed here, I think, is that, when John was in, we were doing an assessment using the HDI Support Center standard. We had worked really hard the year before to reduce our average speed to answer. So when I came here, we were about 12 minutes. We got that down to 30 seconds consistently. So I think that discipline that we had set up really helped us through this. We were able to accommodate this huge spike in volume without really adding many more resources. We had, taken some resources within IS&T and moved them to the help desk to get us through this. But overall, we really didn't have to add a lot of resources.
Well, that was something else too that you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, you only added 3.
Correct.
3 resources to be able to assist with this. And I'm glad you mentioned that what you had done to prepare, because that was really my next question. I wanted to ask John about that too. Like, what did you see that Nick and Jefferson Health had done to really help them prepare for this as much as you could be prepared? But that can, the thing I think the audience is I want you to take away from this is that continual service improvement that we talk so much about. But I think you guys are such a good example of a company that's actually done that. And so, John, I wanted to just ask you really quickly, what are some things that they did to really help improve, kind of, piggybacking off some of the things that Nick mentioned?
I think that there's two major areas here that really play for them. The first is they really are focused on their customers. So, Nick, I think, really understated the value of them working with each of their business units. And what they really were trying to work on and understand was what really was important to each customer business unit. And at the time they're doing this, they also have this huge change of volumes. Like, for instance, elective surgeries are almost non-existent in the beginning, and they're slowly coming back. But, what was very important on Thursday was not so important on Monday. So I think working with each of, and you think of the various business units and the hospital practices and the finance people, and then you're in the education side, and, you've got all of these different things. And they were so focused on working with each of the business units and really understanding what's most important. And then, on the back end, the people I think that really did the Herculean effort was the infrastructure groups, who really had to change the infrastructure to be able to support the way the work is now coming in, going out. And at the same time for them, how do we protect all of this personal health information and student information? So I think that's one thing. On the other side, having been focused so much as the solution center had been focused there about, getting the calls and how do we solve it, and, repeating issues and looking at what's there and making improvements. I think that's helped them. Anybody that's looked at a solution center or service desk knows, you can typically increase the volume 20, 25%, and the team can pull up to get it because there's time in the day, and time does fill the day. However, I think the challenge is over time. We can see they're 50% more, and yeah, there's some productivity increases, there's some of this, there's some of this, but I think the real question is the analysis of how much longer can that team continue to handle that amount of volume increase? Because they're at about a 50% increase adding 3 people. Is that really realistic long term? In the short term, the adrenaline flows, everybody gets pumped up, we can do that. But at some point, the stress is going to continue on. And I think the other challenge is anybody that has a lot of work from home knows it takes more time to solve a work from home connectivity issue, right? And so now we get into the issues of, do we have the relationships with the local ISPs? And, can we escalate to a Comcast or, whoever a Verizon or an AT, whoever the major ISP vendor is when there's an outage, because all of a sudden now, the outage isn't just people can't watch TV, but all of a sudden, 50% of finance can't work to bill, or what's the impact to telehealth? And, and he's a big enough region that he doesn't just have one major ISP. He's got downtown Philadelphia, he's got north of Philadelphia, he's got west, he's got New Jersey. So some of those changes I think are in progress, but supporting a significant work from home population is different, and the characteristics of the work coming in are different.
So let's talk about, we see, where you were February, March. So let's talk about where you are now and what you're seeing, and now what pivots you're going to have to make as you're kind of moving, through the summer into the fall towards the end of the year.
Yeah, so Fancy, I think you hit it on the head with continual improvement. Throughout all of this, we were looking at all of our tickets, trying to figure out what the patterns were, and now we're going back and trying to fix a lot of those. So for instance, we found out that we could optimize the way we register patients on the front end to make their sign up for telehealth much easier. So we've gone ahead and done that now, and we're seeing our telehealth calls go down a little bit. Although we're still running about 2,000 over where we typically are in a week, it has become manageable.
Wow.
The one thing John mentioned I wanted to touch on is people. Our mission is we improve lives, and one of our core values is to put people first. And we really did that here. Even my solution center was very traditional. We had no work from home until this, so we had to take our 80 staff members and get them working from home literally overnight. And one thing I wanted to be sure was that we didn't lose touch with the people. So we ended up having virtual happy hours hours a couple times a week just to touch base with everybody. For the staff who had to come to site, we pivoted quickly to make sure that we took care of them in terms of parking, and we actually even got hotel accommodations for some of them. So, it's important to make sure that you're taking care of the people through all of this. I truly attribute that to getting us through some of this as well.
No, I think that's great, and I love the fact that your mission and your vision are really about people, and it's very succinct. It's very short, and it's something you can really focus on. You mentioned innovations to the patient portal, correct? Yes. What are some other innovations that you've realized out of this?
I think that the whole flow, right? You've got to look at the big picture of everything and break it down and see where your problem points are and just focus on continual improvement, right? Start where you're at and then optimize it. One of the things we realized was that our work from home portal could have been optimized. So we went back and we're optimizing that currently. So we're starting to roll out better work from home solutions for everybody. We've actually built remote onboarding bundles now so that as corporate departments onboard people, it's much easier now. They can go in and order a bundle and we will actually ship it to their house. We've also stood up an online scheduling portal so that remote workers can schedule time with a technician to come in and either get issues addressed or pick up new equipment. So just a few, simple things we've done that seem to have made it a lot easier.
And it's interesting how your innovations align with the people first. So patient portal, the onboarding, because I think, John, you would agree, that's one of the areas that we've seen with working with corporations and I think where companies are still struggling. And I've been reading articles about companies saying, I don't know if this is sustainable long-term, because how do you train? How do you onboard? You take someone, just graduate from college and you throw them in Zoom and expect them to learn. I mean, it's really hard. So I think those innovations are important. I mean, John, any thoughts on that? Because I think you're probably reading a lot of the same things I am around that. And, that focus on the people is important.
I think the key thing here and the reason for their success is it's not just a tagline. When I've been there, I've worked with Nick's manager, who's responsible for all infrastructure and security. I've met with the CIO. It's not a tagline. I mean, these people really care about the people. And I think that really is what allows it to work there. And I think that's the challenge is, I think people minimize this. You can't deliver great customer service if you don't have happy, engaged employees. So if you come back, we've got to make sure the right people, the right skills, and those skills constantly change. And that's one of the things we had worked with Nick previously of, not only where was he 18 months ago, but talking about what are the skills they're going to need in 18 months, 36 months. But it really is that improvement mindset. And I think what I'm seeing for them and for some other organizations is, I think the improvements that people talked about are getting there because it is so critical now. So I think some organizations are seeing where they've done it has really helped them a lot.
Well, it's so interesting because you mentioned, right people, the right skills at the right time. And I feel like we've been teaching this for a long time. So it kind of makes me laugh, it's kind of back to basics. And it sounds like, innovation, maybe I'm wrong on this, but it just made me think of, innovation comes out of doing the basics right. So we have to get here. And Nick, it sounds like you guys did some of that. Okay, but what do we need to do now with people and getting that right with the fundamentals of incident control and the patient portal? And that's where innovations come from. So I think a lot of companies think, we have to innovate. And it's not about that. It's about understanding what you need to do well. And then the innovations come out of that. And I think that's an interesting.
Yeah, but I think it's also listening. It's listening to the people that are doing the work. So many of the good ideas and innovations are going to come from the people that, if we listen to the people, and as Nick said, really looking at what's going on and trying to doing the analytics, looking at, but really not making assumptions, but really looking at what's going on, talking to the people. And I think the other thing is a lot of small improvements, right? And what you had because of the COVID is nobody had time for big things, but it was a series of small improvements that cumulatively are now showing the impact. You're going to get the impact from a whole bunch of small improvements, and obviously, they were accelerated in this time frame. But quickly, a bunch of small improvements that can be done, and all coming together. Now we're getting big and seeing the value of that.
That's a great point, Nick. Is there anything that you want to share that was successful for you guys in listening to your people? Anything formal or informal? You mentioned the happy hours, but that's probably not an example, but that's more connection. But anything formal or informal you did to really get that input that John talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we heard consistently from our operational colleagues was that the hospitals were on lockdown. We couldn't allow visitors in. So we had lots of sick people who couldn't see their family members. So we rolled out a video visit platform. So we deployed 1,000 tablets across the hospital so that patients could video visit with their families. So, we set it up. And it also was dual purpose. So not only could patients visit with their families, but now providers didn't have to enter an isolation room. They could talk to the patient through the video visit, so we could minimize contacts.
That's so cool. Did you guys call it the computer on wheels? Did you have an acronym for it? Because I've worked in teaching healthcare, probably John too. You hear about the nurses on a stick and the computers on wheels. Did you come up with a fun name for it?
No, nothing too creative. No, 1,000 tablets rolled out. Yeah.
So let's talk about something in our preparation for this interview. John shared a really great model with us, and I wanted to bring that up now, and that's that reality curve visual. And this will be available to everyone online because I think this is a really great visual to look at with the reality curve. And John, when they pull that up, I'd like for you, could you just quickly kind of walk through how our audience could use this? And kind of the 5, I guess I could call them phases. That may not be totally correct, but the 5 phases. And then once you explain it, I'd like Nick to kind of share where you guys are, maybe some of the things that you've experienced on that. So John, you want to just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the graph we're showing, we'll give credit to Hornbill, but there was a blog from the CEO of Hornbill that really talked about 5 phases. And when I saw this, it really resonated of what's really going on here. So, you've got the first phase, which is the shutdown that we know happened at different points, but pretty quickly for everybody. We then went quickly to that, I'll say, emergency operational mode. So most companies, I think, are moving out of that. We get into the sort of reality of where are we today. And from that reality point, now we're all trying to figure out, well, what else can we do? Where else do we go? What else is going to happen? And I think as we look at this, we then move to some of the planning, all right? And I think that the thing that I really liked about this, that I'm seeing a lot in the literature from, I saw something in the last couple of weeks from Microsoft, and I'm seeing it from other big vendors, and that is while we all achieved, I'm going to say, this sort of light bulb, for those that didn't believe remote workers were productive, we had this huge increase in productivity and. But often what we miss is that, people are social beings. And what we are seeing, if you look at the graph, is a lot of companies are starting to see this decrease that's going on, in terms of some of that productivity that's there. And then we hit the reality, and then we get out to that graph where we come back up that's the new normal. For some that do organizational change management, there also is that piece of what we call the J curve, right? So if we look at the end, changes, it drops, then we'll sort of come back up. But for me, I love this because I really can't think of anything else that needs to belong on the chart. It's really so comprehensive. But I think the big piece that's really important here is the people piece, the connection piece, and most of us don't want to really sit working in our home office, 8 hours a day. There is that social connection in. Yeah, collaboration tools can help, and they're good pieces of that. But that social people thing, people are social animals. So Nick, I'm going to maybe throw it to you. And how does this graph relate to what you've seen?
Yeah, it fits perfectly, John. So, like you said, overnight we transitioned people home. They were working from home, they were productive, but it wasn't optimal, right? So now we're in that optimization phase where we're going back to determine how do we make it better? How can we make it more productive? We're in the process of also, in parallel of optimizing what we already have out there, we have to build new process for remote onboarding of new hires, right? So we're working to implement an onboarding advisor program where managers can call in and we can help them pick out a hardware package and ship it right out to the new employee. We've also had to pivot organizationally, do orientation online now, and also training for our EMR. So lots of changes there, but we're still conducting those meetings with the department heads of each corporate pillar so that we can make sure that their departments have what they need, because they are vastly different, and build it into a process moving forward for all the new hires.
So let's talk about that with the time we have remaining. So from our conversations, Nick, and I'm kind of aligning it with this new normal maximize opportunity. From our conversations, there are kind of three focus areas where you're pivoting your IT strategy. So what you thought you were going to do in January, now what are you pivoting to? So how are you going to maximize your new normal? What's next for you guys?
Yeah, so our three priorities moving forward now are telehealth, work from home, and online learning. So we were lucky. We invested in all these technologies early, so we had them, but we're now going back and optimizing them. So telehealth, we're rolling out across the enterprise with some optimizations there. Like I said, we've been tweaking workflows as we go to make it easier for the patients, optimizing our work from home. And then for the university side, really there's going to be three modes of teaching now. It's going to either be totally online, a hybrid, or there's just some classes that you do have to bring folks to campus for. So in that situation, we'll have to observe social distancing and all of that.
Okay, and John, I want to ask you from the consultant point of view, what's next for organizations, or just give me a couple of things from a consultant's point of view that our audience could take away that they should be looking for.
I think the first thing is know who your customer is, and know who your customer is and know what they value. This change that's gone about has really changed what's important for our customers. What do they need? What does the ultimate customer need? Again, quite often, and like in Nick's case, he's providing services to clinicians, but they're serving patients. So we really have to understand, what's the value to Jefferson, whether it's the healthcare side, it's the education side, right? So, what's the value to the faculty? What's the value to students? They're slightly different, but we've got to make sure we hit both of those. All right.
Right.
We've got to make sure that we understand the people are there. We've got to, I think the other thing is, I think in any time of crisis, this helps bring people together to get very focused on that common goal. So I think a lot of the silos broke down because they had to, because it was an emergency we were going on. So breaking down the silos. So I think the challenge is, how do we keep that up? How do we better use a lot of the tools that are in place to continue the connections with the people and collaborate?
Well, thank you both so much for being here today. Nick, for sharing your story, and John, for sharing your consultant point of view as being part of the continuous improvement with Jefferson on behalf of HDI. I want to thank you guys so much for sharing this, and I hope that our audience, you got some insight out of that, and also the takeaways to look at. So thank you both so much, and everyone enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.